Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the McLean County Museum of History. My name is Maria Mears, and I am the Director of Adult Education. And we are so excited to introduce Dr. Alicia Wodika, Associate Professor of Health Sciences at Illinois State University, and Michael Bay, Energy Coordinator at the Ecology Action Center, for today's Lunch and Learn. They are representing Bloomington-Normal Community Air Research and Education, BNCARE. BNCARE brings together local partners who are committed to helping the community understand how air quality impacts our health. Working collaboratively, the project's goals are to improve air quality, reduce exposure to pollutants, and increase public awareness of pollution's health effects. The museum's Lunch and Learn series is made possible with the support of our sponsor, MCK CPAs and Advisors. And we'd like to thank our live stream sponsor, WGLT, Bloomington-Normal's Public Radio Media, part of the NPR network, for making it possible for us to present our Lunch and Learn series live online. As a reminder, this program is being live streamed, so if you speak, just be aware that it's online. After the presentation, I will come around. If you have questions, it's really important that you talk into the microphone so our viewers online will be able to hear your questions. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our speakers.
Thank you so much for having us today. It is really important to have these presentations about this project because the whole idea about this project is that it's community-based. All of the data that we're gathering about air quality in Bloomington-Normal, we're sharing with the public. It's very, very important. So thank you for having us in this venue to spread the word about our project. So what we'll do is just briefly talk about air quality. We could be here a long time talking about air quality, but just a real quick background about that. Talk about some current things that are happening. I know that you're probably aware on the news with what's happening in Los Angeles in terms of wildfires and other things that are happening in the US and around the world. We'll talk about our project efforts, and then any questions that you have about the project, we'll make sure that we have time for at the end. We have multiple avenues to give feedback, and so one of them is an air quality concern survey. So whether you're viewing this from the comfort of your home or your office or in person, this is a QR code. It can be accessible through other different areas on our website that we have as well, but I just want to explain what it is. So it has information if you're coming up, and it has a form right away. It's because everything that we do has data associated with that, and because the project is linked to ISU, we had to follow institutional review board protocols, and that's why it has a form just stating that we're using it for research. But any air quality concerns that you have, and it doesn't have to be just this time, it's always open. So if you had a concern, that is something that we're doing. We're gathering information about the topic. So I'll come back and I'll show you where you can access that if you miss it or if you don't want to look at that now. This is a picture from 1966. Does anybody have an idea of what city this would be? It is New York, yeah. So it's New York City in 1966. And so we've been aware of smog issues for a while, but that is what was happening in this photo. So there was air quality alerts because of the smog, or the air quality alerts that they had at this time in 1966. This was before we had specific laws in place that we do now, and so we'll talk about that in just a minute. Previous to this, there was also a big event in the world related to smog. Does anybody know where that was at? Where there was another, it was in 1950s. Where, yeah. It was London. It was, yes, this was a tag team effort here. So we had England and we had London. So yeah, it was in London where there was so much smog, caused deaths, it caused lots of issues, just in general. Buses could not see where they were driving. It was so bad. But in terms of that area, it was something that they were accustomed to in a lot of different places, and a lot of different communities across the world are experiencing issues with air quality still to this day. And so this was in 1966. In this next slide, What we have at home, and as I'm just walking the screen on the left, so that's Lyndon Johnson signing what was essentially the first piece of legislation. And it wasn't the Clean Air Act, it was the Air Quality Act. And so that was in 1967. So thinking about, even though that might seem a while ago, it wasn't that long ago where we're thinking that was only until then where we're having specific pieces of legislation related to the air that we breathe every day. And so that was signed in 1967 for the Air Quality Act. In 1970, the Clean Air Act was signed by Richard Nixon. And so looking at, this was a bipartisan effort across both parties, knowing how important air quality was, starting with previous entities even before Johnson. President Richard Nixon had wrote as well, stating, "I think that 1970 will be known as the year of the beginning in which we really began to understand or to move on the problems of clean air and clean water and open spaces for future generations of America." This is also when the EPA was established. So it was at this time, it was a really pivotal time for legislative movements in the US. So this is important to understand, like, where we're at today with this project and the importance of the EPA being established at that time in the 1970s. So there are common pollutants that we measure in the US, and so there are 6, and these are required by the Clean Air Act. So that was something that was established at that point, that we need to constantly measure these to see what is going on in our communities. And this is specifically related to outdoor pollution as well. The NAAQS is the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And so when we're looking at these, we're talking about, things related to carbon monoxide. You might hear about this a lot related to carbon monoxide in your home, and that can be, directly related to death. That can also be something that's outside as well. In terms of ozone, this is actually located in the stratosphere, but it plays a protective role against UVA or ultraviolet radiation. But at the ground level, it's really harmful to health. So important at the stratosphere, but at the ground level can be affect our health overall, especially with the lungs and the heart. In terms of nitrogen dioxides, the sulfur dioxides, VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, other hydrocarbons, they can impact human health in a multitude of ways. Particulate matter, which is PM, and there might be a designation in terms of the number associated with it, which is the size of the particle, whether it might say like PM 2.5 or PM 10. So that's looking at the size of the particle once it's inhaled and where it can get logged into the lung tissue. And so, it's very small in diameter. But it can penetrate the respiratory system, causing all sorts of issues in terms of, central nervous system functions, even with reproductive tissues as well. So really important we think of why it's important to measure these potential pollutants. These can lead to, diseases ranging from COPD, which is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, bronchiolitis, lung cancer, and various skin diseases as well. In terms of their sources, so they can have major sources. So this would be like emissions from industry. It can be indoor area as well, right? If someone, hopefully not, has like a carbon monoxide leak in their home, that's why we have detectors for things like that. But also like perhaps different places of work that people might be exposed to potential pollutants. Mobile sources, so like transportation industry, trains, planes, automobiles, all things like that. And then of course natural sources with the wildfires, volcanic eruptions, dust storms, ag, and different agricultural things as well. In terms of their measurement, so they're measured usually by ppm, which is parts per million. They can be parts per billion by volume, or micrograms in terms of their presence in the air. So how are they measured as of now? So everyone has access to the EPA's Air Now program. So regardless of where you're at within the world, but specifically within the US, you can type this in and get information on specific locations where there is an air monitor, okay? And that's something that we'll come back to. And so you can look up and add specific devices to your phone or to different places that you want to know. I'm going to be traveling to Los Angeles in a couple weeks. What's the air quality going to be at this point? I'm going to go to this point. What's going on? So you can get an idea of that. It's also usually linked to your phone's weather app as well. So you can make decisions about the air quality. And so what this would look like, I looked at this and added this photo on January 3rd. So on your screen, you just see the date. It always shows you the date. It has an accessible kind of indicator that's color coded for understanding. I know the screen might be a little bit, or I'm sorry, the print might be a little bit smaller here. I tried to blow it up as big as I could, but the green is good, so 0 to 50, so there's no health impacts. Moderate, it looks at individuals who might be more sensitive to impacts for different respiratory types of issues, and so they can make decisions for themselves or their families based on what they're going to be doing. The orange is unhealthy for sensitive groups, and then that means individuals with lung disease, such as asthma, children, older adults, people who are active outdoors, so especially individuals who are working outdoors. Unhealthy is in the red, and so that is, absolutely, this is looking at the following groups should avoid prolonged exposure, and that this is everyone, right? So if looking at the protect your health in the red, the 3 bullet points are for individuals who might be more sensitive, but it's looking at everyone should limit their exposure to outside. And then the worst category is very unhealthy. So that's anything above 200. And so that is actually in the red, and the orange, red, and purple is what, if you looked at Los Angeles right now, you would see specific pockets of that's what they're experiencing right now. And so they need to make those choices for themselves, if in surrounding areas related to that air quality, and that's secondary to other things that they're experiencing there in terms of the fires. Okay, and so the Mike will talk about some complications to air quality.
Thank you. All right, so pretty much the previous few slides just talking about all the work we have done to try and improve air quality, raise awareness about it throughout history, but there are some complications to the progress we're making with air quality, and one of the biggest ones is climate change. So ever since 1895, which is around the time the Industrial Revolution started, and we started burning a lot of coal, a lot of oil, a lot of fossil fuels, we have seen gradual rise in temperatures through the past 100 years. Now, the Earth does usually go through periods of cooling and warming, but the rate at which this is warming is unprecedented throughout all of Earth's history. And you can see ever since the turn of the century in 2000, temperatures have skyrocketed in terms of the rate of warming. And in fact, for the past 10 years, every one of them has been the warmest year on record. Even now in 2025, the ENSO has issued a La Nina warning, which means the Pacific Ocean currents are cooler, so there should normally be a period of cooling for the year. Even that is projected to not be enough to keep 2025 from being the warmest year on record. And I cannot stress this enough, climate change is not a distant issue that will affect us 30 years from now. It's already here, it's already been happening. The wildfires in Los Angeles, for example, was made a lot worse because of the fact that Southern California has not seen rain since May. It has seen maybe 1/10 of an inch of rain since May, and those weather patterns are being exacerbated by climate change. Those droughts that cause the fires are being exacerbated by climate change. Stuff like that. And the topic of fires, one of the worst examples we've seen how climate change affects air quality was in 2023 during the Canadian wildfire season, which is one of the worst wildfire seasons, not just in Canadian history, but in world history. And because of climate change, it doubled the likelihood of extreme fire weather, because in order for these fires to happen, it had to be exceptionally dry, it had to be exceptionally windy, it had to be exceptionally warm. All 3 of those things happened in 2023. And again, this happened in Canada, really up north, where it's supposed to be usually consistently cold up there, consistently not rainy, but snowy with precipitation, and then this did not happen, and those weather changes were doubled by climate change. Or the likelihood of those weather changes were doubled by climate change. But it was a horrible season, And there was no exaggeration to say that the entire country of Canada was on fire in 2023. And you can see these pictures here from on scene. You can see the smoke released from that fire was just awful. And the air quality on scene was saying it was very, very unhealthy was an understatement. But it wasn't just a problem for Canada. I'm sure those of you who remember here, summer 2023 in Illinois, the problem was when the entire country was on fire, the winds would take that smoke, blow it south, blow it east, and then it blew that wind down here in Illinois, and we had some very bad air quality in June 2023 for almost a couple days, almost a week on end. There was one point in June 2023 where the city of Chicago had the worst air quality on the planet because of this wildfire smoke, even worse than notorious cities like New Delhi and Beijing, which have notorious issues with air quality. Chicago was worse than them because of this wildfire smoke. And to tie it all together, climate change doubles the likelihood of extreme fire weather. The extreme fires happen, it releases a bunch of smoke, and then that impacts our local air quality down here to an extreme level with stuff like that. So you can see here, these are markings across the country of what air quality was like in summer of 2023, specifically June. And you can see with the wildfire smoke, it blew down south and east, so it mainly hit Midwest, Appalachian region. Illinois was especially hard hit. Those purple regions are very unhealthy, and a lot of them were in Chicago, and they're in central Illinois. Also, similar locations were in eastern Indiana, western Ohio, but we were impacted very, very heavily by this wildfire smoke in 2023. And even reporting that just for the Bloomington-Normal area in that summer, you can see day by day, air quality should usually be green, yellow is concerning, orange is slightly more concerning, but you can see 27th, it got very unhealthy, and then June 28th was the worst day, an air quality index of 250, which should normally never happen in this part of Illinois, but it happened because of that wildfire smoke. And then, you can see here, if you look at the entire Bloomington-Normal area, we can take a look at at the spread of the pollutants in the area. So you can see particulate matter is a pretty big issue around Uptown. Ozone is a pretty big issue on the western side of Bloomington, a central part of Normal. And again, we're talking about ground level ozone with that. Lead paint is an indoor air pollutant because there's a lot of old houses, typically closer to Bloomington, that may not have had their lead paint removed yet, so that's a very big concern for indoor air pollution. And then you can link all this together with the air pollution, with the increase in respiratory illnesses like asthma, like COPD. That's all linked to a lower life expectancy in those areas that suffer from more lead paint, more ozone, more particulate matter pollution in general. And then this brings us to the point of the BNCARE project, which we'll touch more on later in the presentation with the Ecology Action Center's project, is these areas that suffer more from air pollution, from lower life expectancy. We call these environmental justice areas, which in general are areas that suffer disproportionate amounts of environmental pollution and the health effects from that pollution more than other areas. These areas tend to be lower income, these areas tend to be more minority population, and the local Bloomington-Normal area, these areas were typically focused on West Bloomington and more the southwest side, and then north of Normal, closer to the interchanges with I-39, I-74, and I-55. The neighborhoods there are considered an EJ area, and again, most of West Bloomington has the main problem there is a higher than average ozone pollution level in there, and so those are our main areas of focus for our local air project. And I'm going to give this back to Alicia.
Okay. All right. So Michael had touched on the importance of ozone, so we just really wanted to go back to the importance of addressing ozone, or at least just talking about that in terms of one of the pollutants. And so ozone is what is known as like a secondary pollutant. And so basically when you have nitrogen dioxide in combination with other different types of pollutants, things like VOCs, which are volatile organic compounds, like in the picture with the vehicle. When you get those together with heat and sunlight, and when we're experiencing warmer conditions year after year, we're gonna have more problems related to ozone. In terms of the effects from ozone, a lot of people tend to be at this bottom portion of the pyramid that's in front of you, where it's less likely to be an issue for the majority, but for those who are more sensitive in terms of different types of respiratory conditions, it can be really, really impactful, especially as you go up, related to, lung function decrements, inflammation and permeability, more susceptible to infection, cardiac effects. And so this is, again, where more people tend to be. And then as you go up, it's related to having specific symptoms, like secondary symptoms, doctor visits, school absences, emergency or ER visits, hospital admissions, and then death can also be an impact related to these pollutants, which is why it's so important to get an idea of what is happening within our communities. And then just going back here, when Michael was talking about the map, these are the EJ zones primarily. And so if this is what is occurring in our EJ zones, potentially related to PM 2.5 is in the upper quadrant up here. Lead paint is in the corner at the bottom left, ozone is in the upper right, and at the bottom is just looking at lower life expectancy in general. And so that's important. This is our community. This is important to know what is happening to individuals who live, work, and play. Okay. So one of the last things that we want to talk about before we get to the specifics of our project is related to ozone economically. So we know ozone is important in terms of our health. So human health, very, very important. But in terms of the effects economically, it can be really, really important to communities and cities. So this is looking at emission standards. And so remember, these were set by the EPA and then they are adjusted historically. So this is the design value ozone concentrations. And so McLean County is in the lighter green over here. Peoria County is in the blue. Sangamon County is in the yellow. And then statewide is just a comparison in the darker green at the edge. And so this looks at the design value, which is the 3-year average plus a the fourth high concentration of ozone. And so design values that are greater than 0.075 parts per million and greater than 0.7 parts per million is a violation of the National Ambient Air Quality Standard. So that's set by the EPA. When you're in violation of that, that can have huge ramifications for your community. So aside from the health issues, which we know are there and are most important, but in terms of economic impact, they can be huge. In terms of if industry can no longer come to your community to build a project, or you can't have a certain expansion of your project because you're in violation of the ozone standards or other pollutant standards. So it can have, an economic impact that is, aside from millions, but billions of dollars in terms of the economy for our local and then our larger communities as well. This is in Austin, in Texas. This was done on a report, like if we don't do something about these issues now. And we're not talking about something they could fix in a year. This is decades of an issue where it takes to get back to reducing their overall emission standards. So having poor air quality public health impacts plus economic impacts means potentially significant ramifications. And that leads us to how we measure outdoor air quality in Bloomington-Normal. So we do know we have EPA's air now. This monitor is not in an environmental justice zone though. It's actually located near ISU's campus, just to have reference for where it's at. And so it's great, but it's not in the zones that actually need to be measured as well. And so that's what we wanted to do with our project. This is a map that you could see before we added our monitors as well. And so this again is the EJ zone area. And so that led us to our project, which we call BNCARE. And so it is the Bloomington-Normal Community Air Research and Education Program. This is a partnership between the Ecology Action Center, NAACP, and then ISU. And so we applied for an EPA grant that took several years just to get started. And so this was something that without teamwork would not have happened. Like absolutely, I cannot stress that enough for future people who watch this viewing as well, to stress how important teamwork is. And I'm going to show you in the pictures in just a minute. Let me flip. I had multiple slides here. So it was under the partnership with the 3 of these entities. And so We only had one EPA grade air quality monitor in town. We wanted to add more to that. So we placed 3 monitors in town. I'll show you those and I'll tell you where those are at in just a minute. And we also have portable devices that can be checked out by groups, just to have part of that interactive piece for learning more about the air quality. Our monitors measure 4 pollutants. So we measure volatile organic compounds, we measure nitrogen dioxide, PM 2.5, and then ozone. And our handheld monitors, our portable monitors, all measure those as well. So everything measures all of those pollutants, and real time, as of right now, this is what that number is. We submitted a grant through the EPA, through the American Rescue Plan, and we submitted that in March. We officially received our equipment, or our funding, last year, ordered our equipment in fall 2023, and then began our installation in 2024. So I'm going to show you a series of pictures, because the pictures that we tend to show now are just the monitors that are done, like they're out there, and I'll show you where those are at. It took a while to get here. So from ordering this equipment, having one of the monitors potentially have an issue, having to ship that back, like the EAC is incredible for the amount of work that they have done. One of our community partners, who is not here, who is my colleague, he is our air quality expert, and that's Dr. Elsie Yang. He is in the picture, in both pictures, on the right, on the left and the right, and a student who's working with us in the environmental health program named Abby Gorsuch. And so in the picture that you're seeing on the left, we're putting together the monitors. So that was a learning curve for myself, who I do not have a background in that. And so again, the teamwork makes the dream work. It would not happen without all of us, with all of our specific skill sets coming together. So we had to meet, this was last spring, just putting together the monitors to make sure they were working. We had to, this is what they look like. So in terms of scale, they're relatively small. They look large because they each have 3 solar panels that are attached to them for them to work, and I'll show you that in just a minute as well. So this is like the boxes that would measure each specific pollutant. They have devices that can measure wind speed, so we know everything in terms of directionality of the wind speed, all of that, because that's really important in terms of pollutants as well. Just very important. I always wanted to be a meteorologist, so this was something that was, that was my one claim to fame and my link there. Our sites, one of them is in North Normal at Fairview Park. And so we've had so much assistance. We had assistance from an electricians' labor union who donated their time to help us with this particular region for installation. So ideally, the point of them was to be off the grid, essentially, so that's why we have solar panels. So with them, we had, in this particular site, we had to install them ourselves with the assistance of the electricians, because we were not able to do that. But we had to make sure that they were anchored to the ground, because they're very top heavy, and I'll show you that picture as well. We had to put the solar panels together once we received them. This is the picture. We have one of them at one of Binward's sites, so Bloomington-Normal Water Reclamation District. And so we had to make sure that they were connected to our software. This is a picture of Michael Brown, who's also our partner in this as well. He's our program director. And so he is has skills of a person has every skill, I feel like, that is out there. And so that is him. I'm actually zoom in on the next slide. So this is him putting together just tools that he had in his vehicle to make sure, and these are actual sparks that were flying for him to connect with a grinder, some of the things that we have. Yeah, sorry for those of you who know tools and I don't, but I want to make sure to zoom in so you could see the actual sparks flying on this. So I'm not used to that in my line of trade, which is teaching at ISU. So installing the monitors, putting the solar panels together, it really was a team effort. So these are our 3 sites. We have another team member as well who's technically or currently on leave. So her name's Kelsey Bremner, also at the Ecology Action Center. And then Michael joined our team later last fall.
I joined the team about September 2023 and got on board about October. So I've been part of this team for, let's say, October, November, December, January, 3 to 4 months.
Yes, so more pictures of Michael to be continued. So, but that is our Fairview site. So they are easily accessible. You can walk right up to that monitor. The Binward site is the one that is not as accessible. So that is located behind, oh my goodness, Stark. Yes, so it's located just behind Stark's property at one of Binward's sites, and that's protected by a gate back there, so that is not accessible. And then we have one at Mount Pisgah Baptist Church. So it's just adjacent to the church on a property that they had there. Very, very accessible as well. And so looking at the monitor just on the left over here, so what is actually measuring the air quality is just that little white box that's in the screen. That's it. But how it's powered is the battery that's on the ground that's supporting the solar, and then we have other solar panels as well. So the immense amount of effort that went into these is just really incredible.
And there's ongoing maintenance and updates to that too to make sure they're performing at their best.
Yes, just the checks that Michael has had to do to make sure the solar is working. Do we need to reposition how the solar panel is based on seasonality and all of these things that we're just really navigating through. This was the official launch last fall, and so this is part of the BNCARE team at the time. And so just really important in terms of our work with Deacon Kevin Jackson from Mount Pisgah Baptist Church. This is at the Baptist Church site. And then having President Linda Foster support from NAACP and member support as well. So one of the last things that I'll talk about, I want to make sure I'm cognizant of our time here, is our website. So very, very accessible, and that's what we're hoping to do, is make sure that everyone can access this at any time and get real data at all times. We officially launched this in the fall, so we're getting ready to slowly keep adding things on there, but there's links for, if you want to reach out to any of us and have specific things in terms of educational outreach, wanting to know more about the monitors, different things. Our surveys are always on there. So if you did have air quality concerns later on, or you knew somebody who did, you could direct them to our BNCARE website. We always have the air quality index there. We have that you can sign up for alerts in the blue box right there and get linked to the 3 monitors that we have installed. If you click that and sign up for them, just make sure that you click the little hearts that are circled with the red circles, because otherwise it won't link it and it's not as intuitive in some of the aspects with making sure they're connected. But it has the information related to ozone, related to the other concentrations of pollutants that we're measuring. And one of the last things I was going to say is related to some portable air quality monitors that we have. And so for those of you who are listening at home, I'm sorry you're not seeing these in person, but it's pretty realistic to the picture in front of you in a very high-tech device to transport them in a wagon. But these are the portable air quality monitors, and I'm happy to send this around. And so they're meant to be handheld. With our monitors that are stationary, one of the important things to note is that they are not EPA grade monitors. So meaning EPA cannot take that data. Why? Because the expense related to having EPA grade monitors is exponential in terms of the funding for it. These are also not that, but you get a general picture of what the air quality is at that time. These can be loaned out to community groups, and we're going to be working with schools in the future in the next couple weeks so that they can get hands-on experience with them. They're just easily charged. It's not for indoor air quality, it's outdoor air quality. But it's meant to be very user-friendly so that people can have a role in that. And then at the top of these, what I'm holding in my hand is essentially just the air quality, the portable monitors, and the little devices at the top actually remove, and you can put in a new one if you don't have all 4. So each one can be accessible. I'll just send that around if you're interested in looking at that. We have a Clean Air Coalition, and this is one of the goals that we're wanting to establish, is making sure that we have multiple partners on board with this project. And so, you know, related to building trust and transparency of this data that we're gathering, it's really important. One thing that we're absolutely trying not to do is to point fingers as well. This is something where we're trying to get a general picture of what is happening in terms of our air in our community and not immediately point fingers about whose fault, where's the source, right? So we're trying to get general idea of that, and it's important to have you know, from private industry partners on board to community nonprofits. So everyone being a part of this project. And then Michael's going to talk about some efforts at EAC and bring us home.
Yeah. And then just to reiterate a couple things Alicia said, the goal of this project is, again, we're not doing a blame game, we're not pointing fingers, we're just trying to help our community. We're just trying to find out what's going on, find out the best ways to help us all breathe better air here. And then adding on to our website, I know there's things you can send inquiries to if you have questions about air concerns. Another option is I'm the main contact of the EAC for this program, so if you guys ever have any questions, you want to send email to a real person, please feel free to email me. I will be glad to answer all your questions. My contact should be on the BNCARE website. If it's not...
It's on here too.
Or it's on there?
It'll
okay.
be on there.
It'll be at the end if you guys want to see it. But please, if you want to email me a question, please do. I'll be happy to answer it. Sure. So our BNCARE project is also in conjunction with a lot of other projects the Ecology Action Center is doing. So a big one we have right now, which we've done twice already, is our greenhouse gas inventory, which is pretty much we partner with utilities, governments, companies, and so on to pretty much find out. And we have special software we get from ICLEI to find out how much greenhouse gas emissions are in the community, and what is the trend looking like. So we've done one inventory for 2008, one for 2015, and we are currently in the process of doing one for 2022 to see if emissions have reduced further. So the good news is from 2008 to 2015, emissions have actually gone down in the community, which is a good thing, which is what we want. So now I want to make sure for 2022 that that trend is continuing to make sure we're making all the good progress with that. So the inventory was the first step, because the reason we're doing those, not just to measure emissions, see how we're doing, but also because for the past few years now at the Ecology Action Center, we've been wanting to do what's called a community energy strategic plan. And pretty much what this is going to do is just look at the entire Bloomington-Normal, or now we've upgraded to all of McLean counties, energy usage, ways we can make that usage more efficient, ways we can get newer technology, ways we can reduce emissions even further, ways to mitigate or adapt to effects of climate change, so on and so forth. And the main goal of this is, again, to just see how we can improve our energy usage and just make that usage better for everyone in the community and stuff like that. So this is a long project. We are in the process of completing the greenhouse gas inventory. The actual plan will take a couple years, at least until 2026. And eventually, the EAC will send out more info soon, but we do plan, once we start the actual community energy, I'll call that CESP plan, we do plan to have what's called stakeholder meetings, because this is a community plan. So a big part of this is we want to get input from the actual community on this plan. So we'll have information soon, but I think we will have applications soon for anyone who wants to be a stakeholder in this plan. We would love to have community input from that, and we will have more information soon on that. But that's our main project. Another big thing we have that we've started since 2024, since last year, is our Tree Corps program. So this program is pretty much to just address tree equity issues in the area, plant trees wherever we can. We did have a program which was called the West Bloomington Free Tree Program, where residents of West Bloomington could apply for a free tree in their yard close to their house. We'd come by, we'd plant for them, we'd help them maintain it. And now we have a goal with our grants we've gotten for this program. We have a goal of 10,000 trees a year for 10 years. So planting 100,000 trees to address that, to address the tree equity in this area for that. So you can see the progress we've made so far. So we've made a lot of progress closer to the west side of Bloomington and closer to central part of town with the trees. And also one more update for that West Bloomington Free Tree Program. We've recently expanded that to where anyone in the area can apply for the Free Tree Program at the Ecology Action Center. We've done in town, but we've also, I know currently we have a project to plant at least 100 trees at Kamlara Park, and I'm sure we've done plantings at other parks like Sugar Grove, Constitution Trail, on the Merwin Preserve, and so on and so forth. And again, looking at tree equity, so for those who are wondering why are trees so important, trees actually have a lot of benefits for a city, especially the overall tree canopy, because trees provide a lot of shade, they provide comfort from the sun, they absorb a lot of pollutants, they make the air cleaner, they have a host of benefits for cities. Tree equity is when a city or certain parts of a city have much less tree canopy coverage than other parts of a city or other cities, and as a result suffer the environmental effects of not having enough trees, which are plenty of them. So again, we have some tree inequities in the Bloomington area, mostly again in our environmental justice areas we've already talked about with West Bloomington and North Normal. So that was our main goals, but again, we've updated our program to address tree equity everywhere in there. And you can also see, again, effects of tree equity also links up with health effects in environmental justice areas, what life expectancy is like, what income is like, age, demographics, so on. So all this stuff is interconnected with that, and that's what we're trying to address with all of these programs that we have. And you can see with progress we've made, since planting trees seems like a simple thing, but it really does a whole lot for local environments. So especially for carbon, trees are great at sequestering carbon. So is any plants, but trees are especially very good. So we sequestered at least 618,000 metric tons of CO2 from the air, and this was a value of about 31 million for CO2. We have also removed 7 million pounds of ozone, which is a big thing, especially here, because as we've said, the main pollutant here in Bloomington-Normal and McLean County is ozone, and trees are doing a great job of helping us remove that. So again, this is in conjunction with our air monitoring to see what other steps we can take to address the ozone problem in McLean County. We've also removed a lot of nitrogen dioxide. We at least removed 1 million tons of that. Sulfur dioxide, we've removed 227,000 pounds of that, 633,000 pounds of particulate matter, and then trees are also very good at water management and stormwater runoff, because a big source of water pollution is stormwater runoff. When that water picks up all the chemicals from the road, pesticides on lawns, it goes into sewers, goes into river systems, and those pollutants just spread downstream. Trees and proper natural runoff systems can help avoid that, so trees have helped absorb almost 2 billion gallons of stormwater runoff, and this has avoided about $17 million worth of damages with pollution. Our next steps with this project are, again, more community engagement. We want to have more presentations. We want to have more workshops with the air monitors, stuff like that. As we get more data, we will soon be at almost a year of collecting data, so we're going to update the trends and patterns on that, see what's going on, see is ozone reducing, is it getting worse, when does it peak, when is it that's lowest, what does temperature have to do with that data, just all that stuff. We plan on posting all of that. And then, like I said earlier, our monitors are a constant work in progress. We did all our work to set them up. Our work is never done with that. Just recently, me and Michael Brown went to Mount Pisgah to adjust our solar angle for the winter, because you have to adjust solar panels based on seasons because of the sun. So again, Michael brought the old buzzsaw, and pretty much we fashioned our own metal support for that panel just to get it at the right angle. And then even besides that, it's a progress of making sure the equipment's working right, making sure all the filters and stuff are working correctly, and if it's not, replacing that, because the goal is we want the most accurate data as possible to make sure we're doing the best things to address the air quality in our community. So that's all we have. Thank you all so much for attending this presentation. We really appreciate your time. This is all of our contact information for me, for Alicia, for Elsie, and for Michael Brown. If you guys have any questions about this project or air quality in general, please email any of us. We would all be happy to answer your questions. Thank you all so much.
Okay, so if anyone has any questions, I'll come to you with the microphone.
The monitors that you have at the 3 places, did you have somebody else who had done something that gave you an idea, or were you really working from scratch on that?
That is a great question. So the companies that we were working with were really helpful from start to finish. Looking at, there are entities in the US, like organizations who've been doing this as well, but a lot of it was us. It was troubleshooting, building, everything. But yeah, the individuals, like for where we received the equipment, were really helpful, very timely. If we had a question and we're like, help, like how do, this isn't working, how do we do this? Yeah, so lots of team members from various aspects. But yeah, a lot of it was us, so.
Professor Holland, who's chair of the physics department, once was talking about pollution and power plants, saying that a coal power plant was dreadful for anyone living nearby. Is that supported with these monitors and such?
Can you repeat the first part of your question? I'm sorry.
Well, he was comparing different areas where power plants, different kinds of power.
Yep.
And in particular, coal power plants were awful. Is true?
I mean, so I think that's what we're doing. The point of what we're doing with this research is to measure what is going on, like what is the air quality at these points, and then what are potential sources of pollution in the community. So, in terms of the specific question that you have, I don't have, I mean, anecdotally, I can say that coal can be harmful to health, but, you know, but I don't have the specific data on that. I don't want to say anything out of but coal.
Yes, adding on to that question, there are sources out there that will back up well, it's not a claim. There are a lot of studies that have backed up the claim that coal power plants cause a lot of issues with air pollution. I won't name specific sources. I don't really have them on the top of my head, and I'm not trying to say stuff without evidence, but I know those studies are out there. But with our specific thing, since there aren't really any coal power plant, well, there's some, I think there's still some in Peoria, but I think our distance mitigates any effects that would have. So this study we're doing is mostly just focused on ozone pollution and other sources of pollution in the county. We are not specifically studying coal power plants because I think we are just too far away from most of them.
I noticed you have a monitor at Fairview Park. What does the 3rd or 4th of July look like?
So I'm really glad that you said that. So we actually waited to install it so we don't have the data. So this year will be the first time that we have the data, because when we installed it, it was in stages. So we had to like pour the concrete, then we had to wait, and then so then we had to wait on weather, and so we were right around the time there for the 4th, and so we waited because each one has like a cage around it. We didn't have signage, we didn't have, and some of them look like some of the police station monitors that are, so, and we kind of learned that like individuals at Mount Pisgah were like, this looks kind of, it looks like from the police station, or, so we didn't have signage up. We didn't want to do anything without having that. So we don't have the data yet. So stay tuned for the 4th of July at the Fairview site. It'll be really interesting. So yeah, and that's one thing, like especially with our solar, like just like from any particulate matter or different things, and just the crowd size that's there usually. So yeah, we'll see.
We'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah. It's a great question, though.
Any other? Oh, one more. This isn't necessarily a question about like outdoor air quality, but how can you, are there any strategies that you use around your homes to ensure that you have like good quality air besides just like an HVAC filter and stuff like that? Do you do any additional modifications to your house to ensure good air quality there?
There's more of my end. I also run energy audit programs at Ecology Action Center. Filters are a good thing. Another good thing is just making sure you just have proper ventilation. That's the right structure, size for your house, making sure it's all moving, stuff like that, because filtration and like circulation of air is very important. And also just making sure, like, I think most common source of pollutants in this area would just be if you have any lead paint in there, make sure that's still, because I know the process of removing it and putting non-lead paint there is very time consuming, very expensive. So it's just an matter of, if you do have lead paint in the house, just make sure it's not being disturbed. And then other measures, just don't smoke inside your house. There's also some furniture can release PFAs or VOCs for a little bit. So it's just, if it is, just make sure again you have proper circulation in the house, and just keep the air moving. So besides the HVAC filter, yeah, I think just making sure the air is circulating is a great way for indoor air quality.
I also make a pitch for radon, checking your radon, especially if you have a basement as well. This area is really important to check that. I know most of us if you've bought or sold a home, that's part of the process of that as well. We even have like a radon encatchment system in our home, but it's recommended every 4 years that you're still checking that, even if you have that type of system within your home, but that's something, it's a great time to check it in the winter because a lot of times your windows are closed, like, so you can get a really great idea of what radon is like at that time period.
Yeah. Adding on to that, radon's important. Also, very, very important, carbon monoxide. If any of you guys do not have detectors in your home, get one, because carbon monoxide is extremely important to that, especially if you have an older home. If you have an older gas furnace or gas water heater system, that could be potentially leaking more carbon monoxide in the air than you realize, so it's very important to monitor that. And then I'd say if you also do have an older heating system, make sure it's well maintained. If you have concerns, contact a professional about that. Just make sure it's not subtly just polluting the air quality of your home. But yes, radon, carbon dioxide, extremely important to monitor those.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much to our speakers. I think that was really informative. Our next Lunch and Learn will be Thursday, February 13th, same time at 12:10. We will be having the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project speak on their process of gathering oral histories. So we look forward to seeing you then. And once again, we just really want to thank our live stream sponsor, WGLT, Bloomington-Normal's public media part of the NPR network. Thank you all again for coming.